It began just before the SATs, a time when my future should have been my only concern. Instead, our home was upended by the news that my stepsister Sophie had been diagnosed with diabetes. My stepmother Brenda, who had always treated Sophie like a precious, fragile doll, reacted in the most peculiar way. She immediately pulled her out of school, citing the need for rest, and then proceeded to stock the house with an endless supply of cakes, pastries, and sugary drinks. At home, she encouraged Sophie to eat nothing but sweets. I tried to intervene, to speak some sense into Sophie. I warned her, as gently as I could, that this was the exact opposite of what she should be doing. I told her that if her blood sugar levels continued to skyrocket, the consequences could be devastating, potentially leading to necrosis and even the amputation of her limbs. She wouldn't listen to me. In fact, my warnings only seemed to fuel her defiance. She ate even more, a spiteful glint in her eye, and I watched with a growing sense of dread as her health visibly deteriorated day by day. The day our SAT scores were released was the day my life ended. Brenda, with a triumphant smile, placed a heavy gold choker she had crafted herself around my neck. The metal was cold against my skin for only a moment before a wave of dizziness washed over me and the world went black. When I regained consciousness, it was to a living nightmare. I had swapped bodies with Sophie. I was trapped inside her bloated, failing form, and the stench of decay was my own. I tried to move, but my limbs felt foreign and heavy, twisted with necrosis. Panic seized me as I squirmed on the floor, a prisoner in a dying shell. From across the room, Sophie, now wearing my face and inhabiting my healthy body, let out a cruel laugh. She picked up a slice of cake and threw it at me, her voice dripping with venom. "You bitch! You dared to mock me? Now you can just die. I'm the valedictorian now." Brenda then dragged my new broken body to a clandestine clinic tucked away in a grimy alley. There, they crudely amputated my arms and legs, reducing me to a living torso. I was sold to sadistic clients who found pleasure in venting their rage on my helpless form. For 2 agonizing years, I existed in a large ceramic jar, enduring unspeakable torment until sepsis finally granted me the release of death. But then, I opened my eyes again. I was back in my own bed, in my own body, on the very day Sophie was diagnosed with diabetes. This time, I knew everything that was coming. This time, it would be their turn to discover what it felt like to be a living torso. "Sophie, having diabetes isn't a valid reason to drop out of school," I exclaimed, trying to sound concerned. "The SATs are only 2 months away." When my father, Mark, heard that Sophie was considering quitting her studies, he was concerned enough to take a day off from work to come home and reason with her. For the first time I could remember, Brenda didn't immediately side with him and support his decision. "Honey," she said in a soothing voice, "diabetes only gets worse if you wait. It's not as if we're short on money. She can always take the exams next year." As she spoke, she smiled and pushed a piece of cake into Sophie's hand, then made a show of being fair by offering a slice to me. My stomach twisted into a knot of revulsion and my hand recoiled instinctively. The piece of cake tumbled from my grasp and hit the floor with a wet splat. My father's brow furrowed, his patience instantly evaporating. "Clara, what is wrong with you?" he shouted. "Can you go a single day without causing some kind of trouble? If you don't want to live in this house, then get the hell out." Ordinarily, this would have been Brenda's cue to launch into her saccharine, innocent act, subtly fanning the flames of my father's anger towards me. But this time, she took a different approach, actually appearing to defend me. "Honey, it was just a piece of cake. Why are you being so harsh with Clara? I'm sure she didn't mean to drop it." She then picked up the remaining cake from the plate and let Sophie eat to her heart's content, even bizarrely claiming that diabetics needed to consume more sweets. "Fighting fire with fire," she called it, "is the only way to cure the disease." In my previous life, I had pleaded with Sophie. I begged her to listen to the doctor's advice, not her mother's dangerous nonsense. I warned her that if her diabetes worsened, amputation would be the least of her worries. But Sophie had refused to listen. She had become angry and defensive, eventually moving out of the house to escape my perceived nagging. With the SATs just around the corner, I had eventually given up after a few attempts to reach her. With Brenda and Sophie gone from the house, the constant tension between my father and me had begun to ease. The day my excellent scores were released, my father was so ecstatic that he booked a table at the most exclusive restaurant in the city to celebrate. After we had finished a massive celebratory meal, Brenda finally made a late appearance. She presented me with a gold necklace she claimed to have made herself and insisted on fastening it around my neck. Less than 2 minutes later, I felt a familiar, overwhelming dizziness and collapsed. When I awoke, I was no longer myself. I had switched bodies with Sophie, trapped in a bloated, piggish form with twisted, deformed limbs that were incapable of even supporting my weight. And Sophie, residing in my body, had become the celebrated valedictorian everyone envied. It was only then that I fully understood their monstrous plan. Sophie had always coveted everything about me, my looks, my academic success, my entire life. She had deliberately allowed her illness to ravage her body so that after the swap, she could watch me suffer as a pathetic, broken waste of a human being. Last time, she had succeeded in her cruel wish. This time, she wouldn't even come close. Just as I had anticipated, after my father voiced his disapproval of Brenda's nonsensical sugar cure, Sophie threw a theatrical tantrum and announced she was moving out. She needed to carry out her vicious plan in secret, away from any prying eyes. But I wasn't about to let her get away with it. Sophie harbored a massive, unrequited crush on our school's resident genius, Daniel. In every conceivable way, looks, physique, grades, she was utterly average. All she could do was watch from the sidelines as Daniel seemed to orbit around me. A significant part of her desire to become me was to finally have him. So I devised a plan of my own. I deliberately sought out a sleazy but handsome man named Rick, who bore a passing resemblance to Daniel in height and good looks, and I carefully orchestrated a situation where he could play the hero for her. Predictably, Sophie fell for the setup completely. After Rick had spent another night at Sophie's apartment, I decisively showed my father a news article about a diabetic who had required limb amputations after binging on sweets. Then I added casually, "Dad, I've heard from a lot of my classmates that they've been seeing Sophie at the bakery buying cakes and donuts. If she keeps this up, I'm afraid something terrible might happen." My father had never shown much interest in my personal affairs, but when it came to Sophie, his concern was always paramount. And so, in the dead of night, my father took our family's bodyguards and stormed Sophie's apartment. He kicked open the door to find a man and a woman tangled up naked in bed, with a trash can overflowing with used condoms and junk food wrappers. My father was so apoplectic he raised his cane to strike her. "Sophie, you absolute idiot. All of your classmates are cramming for the SATs, and what are you doing? Shacking up with some random guy you just met. Is this how you repay me for everything I've given you?" Brenda, feigning fear that Sophie might actually be hurt, quickly intervened to smooth things over. "Honey, Sophie has always been so naive. This man must have tricked her." But Sophie was completely lost in her delusion. "What do you know? Rick isn't a liar. I'm with him because I want to marry him. If you say one more bad thing about him, I'll cut ties with all of you." I knew exactly what game Sophie was playing, so I deliberately interjected that I always passed a certain nightclub on my way home from evening study sessions. "I think Rick works there as a gigolo," I said, feigning concern. "He's always with a different woman every night." Hearing this, my father began to tremble with uncontrollable rage. Sophie, however, remained defiant. "So what if he's a gigolo? He earns a living with his own skills. What right do you have to look down on him? I'm sticking with Rick, and nothing you say will change my mind." Though she spoke with bravado, the notoriously germophobic Sophie subconsciously shifted away from him on the bed. I pretended not to notice her subtle movement and continued my performance. A guy like that who sleeps around for a living, you never know what kind of diseases he might have. The next second, Rick, who had been silent throughout the entire confrontation, suddenly spoke up. "You don't have to wonder. I do have AIDS." My father and I scrambled backward in terror. Brenda's face tensed, and she immediately screamed at Sophie. "You silly girl, that's AIDS! What are you just standing there for? Let's go to the hospital and get you on PEP. Any later and it'll be too late." Sophie, looking dazed, started to get up from the bed. But when her eyes met mine, a flicker of an idea seemed to cross her face, and she defiantly lay back down, clinging to Rick and refusing to let go. So what if it's AIDS? As long as it's from Rick, I'll love it all the same. My father was so enraged he threw his cane onto the bed, and it struck Sophie squarely on the head. You stupid thing! If you don't get your ass down here and go to the hospital, this family will no longer have a shameless daughter like you. Sophie clutched her head in pain but still refused to release her grip on Rick. Brenda, who had been frantic just moments before, suddenly became eerily calm. She stopped trying to persuade Sophie to go to the hospital and instead began discussing the logistics of disowning her with my father. Since Brenda and Sophie were so committed to their performance, I was more than happy to play along. In the end, my father, thoroughly disgusted with Sophie, announced to the world that from that day forward, he had only one daughter. Originally, my father had planned to leave 3/4 of the family assets to Brenda and Sophie. But to demonstrate her supposed newfound devotion to me, Brenda publicly insisted that my father change his will. Honey, we can't count on Sophie anymore, she'd said with a sigh. If you leave her anything, she'll just squander it. We might as well change the will and give everything to Clara. Clara is a good girl. She'll take care of us when we're old. My mother's side of the family, who had always been wary of Brenda, instantly saw her in a new, favorable light. In my previous life, she had used this exact persona to manipulate everyone around her. No matter how much I had cried and screamed that I had been framed by them, that they had stolen my body, no one had believed me. Instead, under the guise of providing treatment, Brenda had my tongue torn out and my limbs hacked off. She kept me in a flower pot, a living torso, while everyone praised her for her saintly compassion. They said that anyone else would have simply euthanized such an ungrateful daughter. Who else, they marveled, would spend so much money just to keep me alive? After cultivating her saintly image in public, she secretly sold me to a club that catered to depraved individuals with a fetish for amputees, who used me to satisfy their twisted desires. I endured that hell for 2 whole years before death finally set me free. This time, she was attempting to pull the exact same trick. Did she really think I was some helpless pushover she and her daughter could mold and break as they pleased? At the thought, I glanced up at Brenda. Right now, she was basking in the glow of everyone's praise, diligently working to build her perfect, benevolent image. Don't you all worry, she announced to a room full of relatives. From now on, Clara is the apple of my eye. I don't care about any Sophie or whatever her name is. They can all get lost. I will absolutely treat Clara like my own flesh and blood and never let her suffer a single grievance. With the SATs just half a month away, I will make sure our family produces a valedictorian. But she had no idea that her good days were numbered. 10 days before the SATs, I celebrated my 18th birthday. My father and Brenda made a huge deal out of my coming-of-age party. They not only held a grand banquet at our home, but also invited a host of relatives and business associates. Naturally, I invited my good friends from class to celebrate with me. My friends' eyes widened in envy when they saw the $20,000 custom-made cake. Clara, you are way too low-key. You never told us your family was this rich. Yeah, and we never even knew Sophie was your stepsister until we came here today. Another friend chimed in. You have such a good temper, Clara. If someone used my dad's money to show off at school all day and tried to bully me, I would have slapped her a long time ago. Speaking of which, it's your birthday. Why isn't Sophie here to give you a present? Even if she's too petty to get you a gift, Daniel is here. You'd think she'd be dying to suck up to him. The mention of Sophie sparked a great deal of curiosity among my classmates. One of the bolder ones even asked Brenda directly about her whereabouts. My stepmother answered vaguely, "Oh, her. She hasn't been feeling well lately. She went out of town for treatment." I glanced at the time, then at Daniel, who was enjoying a piece of cake. Any minute now, a certain someone should be arriving. Just as I was thinking it, our butler rushed in to announce that Sophie was at the front gate, asking for someone. Brenda's face flushed with panic as she quickly ordered the butler to send her away. But my classmates were already shouting that they would go to the gate themselves to greet Sophie. Caught off guard by the sudden appearance of our large group, Sophie timidly shrank back into the shadows. Brenda stood in front of her, her face a mask of fury. Didn't I tell you to stay in your apartment and cooperate with your treatment? Don't wander around. What are you doing here today? Go back right now. She shielded Sophie from our view and waved frantically for the driver to take her away. She was so desperate, it was as if she was terrified of something being revealed. I forcefully shoved Brenda aside and pulled Sophie out from the darkness and into the light of the porch. When the crowd saw what Sophie looked like, they gasped in collective shock. Sophie, it's only been 3 months. How did you blow up like a beach ball? It's so hot out. Everyone's in shorts and dresses. Why are you wearing long sleeves and pants? Aren't you afraid of getting heat stroke? It's Clara's 18th birthday today. What gift did you bring her? My classmates surrounded Sophie, chattering away with a mix of morbid curiosity and disdain. Sophie glanced at Daniel, who was standing off to the side, looking completely indifferent to the unfolding drama. She couldn't help but snap back. What does Clara's birthday have to do with me? I didn't come here for her. Daniel noticed her staring at him and asked, genuinely puzzled, "Why are you looking at me?" The classmates burst into cruel laughter. Sophie, you're really punching above your weight. Daniel wasn't interested in you even when you were looking your best. Do you really think he'd like you now that you look like a pig? Keep dreaming. You're so ugly right now, you'd make a stranger lose their appetite. Stop trying to gross Daniel out. Exactly. It's Clara's birthday, and you, the stepsister, didn't even bring a gift. You have no shame showing up here. My desk mate, who had always disliked Sophie's arrogance, took the opportunity to give her a shove. Sophie lost her footing and fell heavily to the ground. Her hands, which had been hidden in her long sleeves, slipped out into view. Her skin was dark and mottled, and her fingers were twisted into unnatural shapes. It was a disgusting sight. Daniel immediately frowned and pulled me back with him, away from her. Seeing his reaction, tears streamed down Sophie's face. Daniel, you're the one who asked me to meet you tonight. Why are you hiding? The others shrieked and backed away, not forgetting to mock her as they went. Why would Daniel ask you out? You must have lost your mind. Sophie, what's wrong with your hands? Did you catch some kind of disease? Seeing Sophie weeping on the ground, Brenda grabbed her and tried to shove her into the car. I immediately spoke up to remind everyone of the danger. Brenda, Sophie has AIDS. You should be careful not to get infected. That statement truly stirred the hornet's nest. Not just my classmates, but all the relatives who had been drawn outside by the commotion erupted in a chorus of disgust and fear. Oh my God, Sophie, you're disgusting. Why are you running around outside when you have AIDS? She probably couldn't get Daniel, so now she's trying to get revenge. Her heart is so twisted. Are there any bodyguards? Get this toxic person out of here before she hurts someone. My classmates were terrified, and their words were venomous. Furious, Sophie shoved Brenda aside and tried to rush toward Daniel, but a bodyguard who had just arrived on the scene deftly tripped her, and she fell hard to the ground again. Ignoring the pain, she sobbed and demanded, Daniel, didn't you write me a letter saying you've had a secret crush on me and that you'd come to my house tonight to confess your feelings? What's the meaning of this, holding on to Clara? If you hadn't invited me, why would I have dragged my sick body out here just to be humiliated by this pack of bitches? Seeing the letter Sophie pulled from her pocket, Daniel finally understood what had happened. I did write that letter, but it wasn't for you. I don't know how it ended up in your hands. I immediately put on a sorrowful expression and tried to comfort Sophie. I'm so sorry, Sophie. My classmates wrote me birthday wishes in advance, and I must have gotten them mixed up and sent you the confession letter instead of an invitation. I was hoping to use my birthday as a chance to help you make up with Dad and Brenda. But Sophie wasn't buying my story for a second. Enraged, she picked up a rock from the garden bed and hurled it at me. Clara, you bitch! What do you mean you mixed them up? I think you did it on purpose to humiliate me in front of everyone. I'm gonna kill you, you little slut. As Sophie spewed curses at me, a flicker of anger crossed Daniel's face. Clara isn't like that. You watch your mouth. Sophie's rage only intensified, and she lost all semblance of reason. I won't watch my mouth. So what? Not only will I curse her, but one day I'm going to skin her alive, rip out her tongue, chop off her arms and legs, and let 1,000 men have their way with her until she's begging for death. Seeing her words grow more and more vile, Daniel coldly kicked her hard, sending her stumbling against the garden wall. Sophie clutched her chest in pain, a trickle of blood appearing at the corner of her mouth. "Daniel, you dared to hit me? I'm calling the police. I'll make sure you go to jail and miss the SATs. Let's see you chase after that bitch Clara then." Just then, my father emerged from the crowd. He slammed his cane on the ground and asked in a low, dangerous voice, "You say Daniel hit you? Do you have any proof?" The others in the crowd either looked away or loudly proclaimed that they hadn't seen a thing. Sophie's face turned beet red as a violent coughing fit choked out her tears and snot. After a moment, she bent over and looked pleadingly at Brenda. "Mom, they're all ganging up on me like this, and you're just going to stand there and watch?" With everyone's eyes on her, Brenda's fingers clenched into white-knuckled fists. One of my mother's relatives started shouting, "Brenda, you're the one who stood in front of all of us and swore you didn't care about any Sophie and that you'd treat our Clara as the apple of your eye. Do you stand by your word or not?" Hearing this, Sophie wailed even louder. "Mom, this is all that little bitch Clara's fault. She deliberately set me up to embarrass me. You're not going to help me, are you? You're going to help her. I'm your daughter." Blood was still trickling from the corner of Sophie's mouth, but Brenda acted as if she didn't see it. She walked up and slapped Sophie twice across the face, hard. She screamed as she did it. "You're the one who refused to get treated at the hospital and ate nothing but sweets every day. That's why you're a fat slob with hands like that. You're the one who had no self-respect, shacking up with that gigolo and getting yourself sick. What does that have to do with Clara? I don't have a daughter like you. Get the hell out of here and go back where you came from." Brenda cursed viciously and even gave Sophie a hard kick for good measure. After venting her rage, she forced a smile and urged everyone back inside to continue my birthday celebration. As for Sophie, she could just rot outside. When my father saw how she handled the situation, he was finally satisfied and led the guests away. As I turned to leave, I saw Sophie staring at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. She was muttering under her breath, "Clara, you just wait. Everything you have will be mine. I will make you wish you were dead." I was enjoying the show when Daniel suddenly stepped in front of me, blocking Sophie's hateful gaze. He patted my shoulder comfortingly and escorted me back inside the house. After the party ended, Sophie was long gone from the wall outside, and my wonderful stepmother, Brenda, snuck out in the middle of the night and took a taxi to Sophie's apartment. On the surveillance footage I had access to, Sophie was having a complete meltdown in her apartment, screaming, "I'm going to kill Clara and her father. I'll chop them into 1,000,000 pieces and feed them to the fish." Brenda, full of pity, tried to comfort her. "Sophie, didn't Mommy tell you? Everything Clara has will be yours one day. You just have to stay home, keep eating sweets, and let your body get worse." Sophie's bloodshot eyes looked like they were about to pop out of their sockets. Her lips twisted into a terrifying snarl as she shrieked, "I just can't stand it. Why does that bitch get Daniel's affection? Mom, look at me. I don't even look human anymore. How much longer do I have to wait?" Brenda quickly reassured her. "Sophie, as soon as Clara's SAT scores are out, I'll swap you immediately. Then Daniel will be all yours." Sophie stared at her, then held a knife to her own wrist. "No, I can't wait that long. As soon as Clara finishes her exams, I want the swap. I can't stand the thought of Daniel getting with her after the SATs." Sophie dug the knife into her flesh. Brenda screamed in terror. "Fine, fine. Mommy promises. Just put down the knife and bandage your hand." Having gotten her way, Sophie calmly took out a pre-prepared bandage and carefully wrapped her wrist. After turning off my phone, I got up early the next morning and waited in the living room. Brenda walked in carrying a small basket and jumped when she saw me. "Clara, you must be so tired from your birthday party yesterday. Why didn't you sleep in? You need to rest up to be ready for the SATs in a few days." I chewed my toast and looked at her, my face a blank mask. "Brenda, it's so early. Where have you been?" Brenda froze for a second, then smiled. "Your exams are right around the corner. I went to the temple to pray for you to get a good score." She took 2 gold bars out of her basket, saying she was going to use the blessed gold to make me a necklace that would keep me safe and bring me good fortune. My dad came downstairs just in time to hear this and was naturally delighted. Clara, your Aunt Brenda has gone to so much trouble for you. Now that she's married to me, you really should start calling her Mom. Ever since Brenda had married into our family, my dad had been trying to get me to change how I addressed her. We had fought about it so many times that our relationship had become strained. I couldn't believe that just as things were starting to get better between us, he was bringing it up again. Seeing my unhappy expression, Brenda smiled and tried to smooth things over. Oh, it's just a title, it doesn't matter. The most important thing right now is Clara's exams. Everything else can wait. We can't do anything to affect her performance. Brenda was so terrified that I wouldn't do well, that it would ruin Sophie's future prospects after the swap. During that time, she was practically walking on eggshells, afraid of doing anything to upset me. And so, the 2 days of the SATs came and went. Afterward, the seniors were like wild horses set free. The day after the exams, Daniel came over and asked me to go see a movie. Seeing her chance, my stepmother pulled out the gold choker she had poured her heart and soul into making. Before I could react, she put it around my neck. I frowned, annoyed. Brenda, this style is a little old-fashioned. I don't like it. Brenda ignored my protest, fastened the clasp, and then tried to guilt-trip me. Clara, this is a style I designed especially for you. The gold was blessed before a statue of Buddha. It will keep you safe. You can't buy something like this anywhere else. My dad chimed in. Only your Aunt Brenda would be so thoughtful. Most stepmothers aren't this good to their stepdaughters. Be a good girl, or you can forget about your date today and stay home for the rest of the summer. I fiddled with the clasp and pouted reluctantly. Daniel tried to speak up for me, but I stopped him with a look. Seeing me leave with the necklace on, a triumphant look flashed in Brenda's eyes. About half an hour later, during our date, I suddenly fainted. Daniel rushed me to the hospital and called my parents. My dad was furious, relentlessly questioning Daniel about what he had done to me. Daniel was sweating bullets. Sir, you've misunderstood. Clara and I just went to the movie theater. Halfway through the movie, she suddenly said she had a headache and her chest felt tight, and then she just passed out. My dad didn't believe him. Bullshit! Clara is as healthy as a horse. She's never had anything like this happen before. You must have given her something. I want the hospital to do a blood test. Brenda, however, ignored my dad's outburst. The whole time, she just stared at me, watching my every move. When she judged that enough time had passed for the swap to be complete, I slowly began to stir. The first thing I did when I woke up was touch my own body with a look of pure, unadulterated joy. Then I grabbed Brenda's hand and shouted excitedly, "Mom, quick, get me a mirror." Hearing me call her Mom, Brenda's face lit up. My dear Clara, just a moment. After seeing my face in the mirror, I couldn't stop stroking my reflection, an irrepressible laugh bubbling up in my throat. This face, it's so beautiful. Brenda cleared her throat, reminding me of the 2 bewildered men standing beside me. I completely ignored my dad, jumped off the hospital bed, and threw myself into Daniel's arms. Daniel, you have no idea how scared I was just before I fainted. I was terrified I'd never wake up and get the chance to tell you, I've always been in love with you. Daniel was ecstatic. Hey, Clara, are you serious? I cupped my warm cheeks and nodded enthusiastically. A smile spread across Daniel's face, and his warm hand gently pulled me closer. Clara, I've waited 3 whole years to hear you say that. I'm so glad I waited. His soft words made my eyes burn. So this is what it feels like to hold the person you love, to confess your feelings for each other. If it weren't for Sophie and her mother's evil plot, I would have gone to my dream university with Daniel and lived a happy, normal life. Seeing Daniel and me clinging to each other, my dad was not pleased. What do you 2 think you're doing? You just finished your exams and you're already all over each other. You think you did that well? Go home, both of you, and stay away from each other until the scores are out. Brenda quickly patted my dad's back to calm him down. Honey, you don't need to worry about Clara and Daniel's grades. One is first in the year, the other is second. They'll definitely be first and second in the state. You'll have so much to be proud of. At the mention of grades, my dad's expression softened slightly, but he still insisted that Daniel and I stay apart until the scores were released. When we got home, Brenda quietly pulled me into my room and whispered tentatively, Sophie, I threw my arms around my stepmother, jumping up and down with glee. Mom, it's great! Our plan worked. That bitch Clara is finally going to be crushed under my heel, living a life that's not even human. Brenda, relieved, shushed me. Then she asked what I planned to do with Clara next. I slowly toyed with a strand of my hair, a meaningful smile playing on my lips. Clara is in my body now. She must be so scared and confused. She might even pretend to be me and try to trick you into taking her out so she can get help, telling people we used black magic on her. Brenda scoffed. Does she think I'm an idiot? That I'll believe anything she says? I leaned in close. Of course you won't be fooled, Mom. But if you let her run her mouth, someone else might believe her. Especially that old man and Daniel. They saw how I acted at the hospital. They might get suspicious. Brenda's expression turned sinister. Then I'll make sure Clara never gets the chance to speak. Using some flimsy excuse, Brenda took me to the apartment Sophie had been renting. As soon as she opened the door, we saw Sophie writhing on the floor, trying to crawl toward us in her own bloated, decaying body. Mom, lock the door. Put that gold necklace on Clara. I can't wait to take over her body and enjoy everything she has. She gurgled, her eyes filled with jealousy and madness. But Brenda didn't move. Clara, stop the act, she said, her voice cold. Did you really think that after I swapped you and Sophie, I'd ever let you change back? Keep dreaming. My stepmother threw a pair of large pliers on the floor and started pulling on a pair of rubber gloves. Sophie sensed something was terribly wrong and flailed her limbs, trying frantically to explain. Mom, what are you doing? I'm your Sophie. Did Clara trick you? Or did you use the wrong necklace? Did it not work? Why haven't Clara and I swapped bodies? Brenda kicked her hard in the mouth, cursing as she did. Shut the hell up. I've been putting up with you for months and it's been hell. If it wasn't for this day, I would have cut you into pieces and sent you to join your dead mother in hell long ago. With her mouth blocked by Brenda's shoe, Sophie could only make muffled, helpless whimpers. I used the tip of my own shoe to lift her chin, my voice slow and full of mockery. Sophie, I knew you'd try to pull something like this. You love to make up stories, don't you? Well, I'll just have to rip out your tongue so you can't talk anymore. But don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly. After all, the game is just beginning. Whether from anger or fear, Sophie's whole body trembled uncontrollably. The veins in her neck bulged, and she clutched the hem of her clothes. But Brenda gave her no chance to make another sound. She clamped the pliers onto her tongue and with all her strength, ripped it out. Amidst a muffled scream of agony and despair, Sophie lost her tongue and became a mute. As if that wasn't enough, Brenda cooked Sophie's tongue into a dish and forced her to eat it. Watching her terrified eyes reflect Brenda's gleeful face, I felt a surge of triumphant joy. All the pain they had inflicted on me in my past life, it was finally time to settle the score. After forcing Sophie to eat her own tongue, Brenda brought her back to our house. In front of my dad and our relatives, she began to weep theatrically. I know my daughter is thoughtless and has made many mistakes, but she is my own flesh and blood. I can't just watch her die. Please, I'm begging all of you, use your connections to find some help, at least so she can live, so she doesn't have to be so miserable. Brenda was putting on a grand show of helping Sophie, but it was all just to build up her own reputation. She had no intention of using any of the legitimate medical resources our family recommended. She had already picked out a shady back-alley clinic and was just waiting a few days to deal with Sophie permanently. Sophie knew what her mother was planning and shook her head desperately from her spot on the floor. It seemed like she was trying to tell everyone she didn't want her mother's treatment. Faced with the relatives' confused gazes, Brenda lied smoothly. The poor child knows she was wrong. She's shaking her head to show she'll never disobey her elders again. The moment the words left Brenda's mouth, Sophie burst into tears, opening her mouth wide and screaming silently at her. My dad took a step back in shock. What happened to Sophie's tongue? Brenda sighed dramatically. I told her not to date that gigolo, but she wouldn't listen. She performed certain acts on him. Her tongue became necrotic, so the doctors had to remove it to stop the infection from spreading to the rest of her mouth. Hearing this, everyone looked at Sophie with undisguised disgust. I shook my head, clicking my tongue. My dear sister, you really shouldn't have been so willful. It's one thing to ignore dad and me, but how could you not listen to your own mother? She raised you for 19 years. She would never hurt you. Brenda nodded in solemn agreement. Exactly. A simple truth that even Clara understands. But this wretched girl doesn't. And when things go wrong, who has to swallow her pride and clean up the mess? Me, her mother. Our relatives immediately started praising Brenda for her boundless kindness. Sophie thrashed her body against the carpet, trying to express her outrage. But she had underestimated them. These people didn't even see her as human anymore. They wouldn't spare her a single glance. After milking the situation for a few more days, Brenda was finally ready to take Sophie to the shady clinic. But Sophie thrashed wildly, refusing to let anyone near her. She even tried to bite the ropes to stop them from getting her into the car. Brenda was frantic and started screaming at her. Are you trying to die? I've had so many famous doctors look at you these past few days, and they all say you're a lost cause. Now that I've finally found a place willing to perform the amputations to extend your life, what are you making such a fuss about? Brenda called over several bodyguards to force her into the car. My dad stood to the side and asked quietly, Brenda, does Sophie really need to have amputations? Shouldn't you get a few more opinions? I cut in immediately. Dad, Sophie is Brenda's own daughter. If there was any other way, do you think she would have the heart to let her own child be amputated? What you're saying is just twisting the knife in her heart. Catching my signal, Brenda started to wipe away fake tears. Mark, do you think I'm some kind of monster? That I could order my own daughter's amputation without a second thought? If you really think that, then there's no point in us staying together. My dad immediately panicked, apologizing and consoling her. He finally managed to calm her down. When the car returned later that day, Sophie, who had once been a person, was now a limbless doll stuffed into a large vase ready to be carved up. While Brenda was busy, I took a wooden stick and played with Sophie's hair. Sophie? Who would have thought? In the end, the one to have her tongue ripped out and limbs chopped off was you. Wouldn't you call that karma? The more you wish for someone else's suffering, the more you end up suffering yourself. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, the SAT scores came out this morning. I'm the state valedictorian. Daniel is second. We'll be going to the same university, spending a sweet 4 years together. And you're about to be sent by your own mother to that sick club to be used and abused by a bunch of old, ugly, vicious scumbags. You'll be begging for death but won't be able to find it, living every day in hell. At my words, the whites of Sophie's cloudy eyes threatened to roll back into her head. Her remaining stumps twitched in the vase, and a garbled whimper escaped from her ruined mouth. Even in her rage, she was so helpless, so pathetic. But Brenda, rushing back into the room, saw her like this and, furious, grabbed the stick and started beating her over the head. You little brat! If the Lees hadn't taken pity on you and paid for your treatment, you'd be dead in a ditch somewhere. How dare you get angry at our valedictorian? Are you looking for a beating? Brenda swung the stick viciously until Sophie's head was swollen and bruised. I smiled and asked her, Mom, you usually avoid hitting her anywhere obvious. Why the sudden change of heart today? Brenda smiled triumphantly. The day after tomorrow, your father is throwing you a huge graduation party. He's inviting all our friends, relatives, and business partners. This thing is bad luck. I've already promised your father I'll get her to that club today and make sure she never comes back. Hearing this, Sophie thrashed her stumps wildly to show her displeasure. But Brenda, thinking it was just a random spasm, just hit her across the face a few dozen more times without a shred of pity. That night, a group of men quietly took Sophie away. She was delivered to the city's most hidden club, where she became the most requested item for enthusiasts of the limbless. After dealing with Sophie, I started to probe Brenda. Mom, now that we've taken care of Clara, what are you going to do about the old man? You're not really going to spend the rest of your life waiting on that geezer, are you? Brenda pursed her lips. Of course not. You know my tastes. If it wasn't for the money, I could never stand that old man. If it weren't for the few boys I have on the side these past few years, I would have died of frustration. I was genuinely shocked. I couldn't believe that Brenda, who acted so respectful to my dad, was secretly keeping male models. Suddenly, I had a plan. I said casually, "The old man's will is already written. If he dies, all the assets go to me. But as long as he's alive, we have to live by his rules. It's so suffocating." Brenda's eyes lit up. "Sophie, are you suggesting I get rid of that old man sooner rather than later?" I rolled my eyes. "I didn't say that. You did." With that, I walked away. That same day, Brenda snuck out. She didn't come back until very late. 2 days later, at my graduation party, the place was packed and buzzing with excitement. Daniel came with his parents and stuck by my side the whole time. I teased him for being a shadow. Daniel just smiled stupidly and laced his fingers with mine. As we wandered into the back garden, we heard lewd noises coming from the garden shed. Daniel, blushing, tried to pull me away. Just as we were about to leave, we heard Brenda's voice from inside. "So, my darlings, are we satisfying you? Does that old man have our stamina?" A man's voice replied, followed by Brenda's laugh. "Mark? That impotent old fool can't even get it up. He's got nothing on you two." Hearing my stepmother's brazen flirting with two gigolos, I gasped and covered my mouth. I whispered to Daniel, asking what we should do. Daniel just sent a text message from his phone. A few moments later, my father, Mark, stormed into the garden with a group of servants. Daniel pulled me into the bushes, and we watched as my father had his men drag out a naked Brenda and her two lovers. Brenda, her face flushed, struggled and tried to throw herself at the bodyguards holding her. My father, enraged, swung his cane and hit her over the head. The pain seemed to snap Brenda back to reality. She looked down at her naked body and shrieked, "Honey, it's not what it looks like. Someone must have drugged me. I don't even know these two men." But Brenda's two lovers confessed that the three of them had been together for over a year. My father was so furious he nearly collapsed. He immediately had someone grab Brenda's phone. As soon as it was unlocked, they found videos and chat logs of Brenda's escapades with her lovers. My father immediately called for his lawyer to handle the divorce. Brenda was terrified and clung to my father's leg. "Honey, I just made a stupid mistake. Please don't kick me out. I swear I'll never do it again. Today is Clara's graduation party. All these important people are outside. If this gets out, people will talk. What will they think of Clara?" Seeing Brenda use me as a shield, my father swung his cane at her again. "Brenda, you have the nerve to mention Clara? You knew all these guests were here, so how dare you do something so shameless in the back garden? Did you really think our family couldn't handle you?" My father insisted on proceeding with the divorce immediately. Brenda's expression changed, her meekness vanishing. "Mark, you bald old bastard, you dare? I'll run into that hall right now and tell everyone you're impotent. You can't even function as a man. What right do you have to demand I stay faithful to you? Can't I find a way to satisfy my own needs?" Brenda blurted out my father's deepest secret. The servants in the room immediately bowed their heads, pretending not to see a thing. My father let out a roar, kicked over a tea table, and screamed hoarsely, "Brenda, you're full of shit. Say that again, and I swear I'll kill you." But Brenda just wiped the spit from her face, fearless. "Mark, you think I don't know how Clara's real mother died? It's because you're impotent. She wanted to divorce you, and you were terrified she'd tell everyone your dirty secret, so you had someone tamper with her car and cause an accident. And as luck would have it, the man you hired to do it was my ex-husband." My father pointed a trembling finger at Brenda, but his throat seemed to be clogged with phlegm, and he couldn't get a word out. Hearing the truth about my mother's death again, I shot to my feet. Daniel held me worriedly. "Clara, what your stepmom is saying might not be true. Don't let her get to you." Brenda saw me and laughed. "I swear on my life that Clara's mother died at Mark's hands. Does he dare to swear she didn't? Let's see if her headless ghost doesn't come for you in the middle of the night." My father's body shook uncontrollably. He couldn't utter a final word before he coughed up a mouthful of blood and collapsed. Everyone panicked, and the butler called an ambulance. In the chaos, Brenda quickly got dressed and signaled for her lovers to run. Seeing this, I ordered the bodyguards to stop them and then called the police. Before the police arrived, Brenda kept trying to give me meaningful looks. When I didn't respond, she grabbed me and demanded to know what I was doing. I stared at her, my face a blank mask. You cheated on my father with wild men at my graduation party, caused him to have a stroke and end up in the ICU, and then publicly accused him of murdering my mother. What's wrong with me calling the police to find out the truth? Brenda was utterly confused, hissing at me in a low voice. Sophie, you're the one who taught me all this. You told me to provoke Mark to make him have an attack. Now that Mark is down, you should be happy. Watching my father cough up blood and collapse, I was indeed very happy. After my death in my past life, I had learned the truth about my mother's death from a confrontation between my father and stepmother. I never for a moment stopped wanting revenge. Revenge not just on Sophie and her mother, but on my father as well. He killed my mother in a car accident just to protect his so-called privacy. He even fabricated stories about my mother having an affair, preventing her from being buried in her family's ancestral plot. Today's setup was for my stepmother, but it was also for my father. I feigned ignorance and looked at Brenda. Brenda, I think you've lost your mind. I'm Clara, not your daughter Sophie. Brenda froze, and her expression turned to one of pure panic. Sophie, don't scare Mommy. Are you just playing a joke on me? In a corner where no one could see, I gave Brenda a playful, chilling smile. Brenda, have you forgotten? The real Sophie has already had her limbs cut off and been sent to a club for men to play with. I wonder if she's even still alive. Brenda understood immediately. Enraged, she grabbed a porcelain cup from a nearby table and hurled it at me. The cup shattered and a shard grazed my arm. Daniel lunged in front of me, shielding me with his body. Brenda, what do you think you're doing? The police are on their way. If you dare touch Clara, I'll make you pay. Brenda's eyes were bloodshot as she roared at the sky. You really think she's some innocent little thing? She's a manipulative bitch. She played us all for fools. I peeked out from behind Daniel and deliberately provoked her. Brenda, I don't know what you're talking about. Sophie got diabetes, and you were the one who stopped her from getting treatment and fed her sweets every day, which led to her amputations. You chose the hospital for the surgery, and you chose the place she was sent after. What does any of that have to do with me? Brenda's face contorted with rage. She grabbed a shovel from the wall and charged at me. You ruined my poor Sophie. You're not getting out of here alive today. I'm going to cut you into 1,000 pieces. But with so many bodyguards around, there was no way she could actually reach me. Instead, her frenzied attack got her arrested on the spot. My father was sent to the ICU where his organs slowly began to fail. The doctors discovered that he had been systematically poisoned over time. The police searched our house and found the rest of the poison hidden in Brenda's cabinet. My father died from the poisoning. Brenda was sentenced to life in prison for his murder and for her role in my mother's death. Not long after, Sophie, unable to endure the inhuman treatment at the club, swallowed a spoon and killed herself. After they were all dead, I had my mother's grave moved from its lonely, disgraceful spot outside the city back to our family's ancestral plot. Then, with the past finally buried, I went with Daniel to our university up north, ready to start a new life.